The graduation was meant to honor the living. But everything stopped when the commander saw one mother's hidden tattoo. In that moment, the past came crashing into the present and her son's life changed forever. The morning light spilled over the academy grounds, painting the tall buildings in shades of gold. Birds circled above the parade field, their cries sharp against the silence of dawn. Long rows of recruits stood in formation, their uniforms crisp, their faces unreadable. Today was the day they had been waiting for. Graduation day. Ethan Cole shifted his weight slightly, feeling the leather of his boots press against the stone. Beneath him, he had dreamed of this moment for years. His mind wandered to the path that had brought him here, a path carved with struggle, loss, and relentless effort. His journey had not been simple, nor had it been kind, but it had shaped him into the man now standing in line with the others. The academy was not a place for the weak. Every corner had demanded sacrifice. Long nights of training had left his body trembling. Endless runs had torn his lungs apart. There were times he thought he would not last another day. Yet somehow, he always found the strength to continue, not for himself alone, but for the memory of the man whose footsteps he followed. His father. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, remembering the stories his mother had told him. His father, David Cole, had been a man of discipline and courage. A man who believed that service was not a choice, but a duty. He had given his life on a mission, long before Ethan could truly know him. For years, Ethan carried only fragments of him, a folded flag, a faded photograph, and his mother's quiet strength. And now, here he was, wearing the same uniform his father once wore, standing on the edge of a new beginning. The crowd behind the gates swelled with families. Proud fathers stood tall with cameras in their hands. Mothers wiped at tears that refused to be held back. Children clapped excitedly, not fully understanding what the day meant, but sensing its weight. Among them sat Ethan's mother, Margaret. She held a small photograph in her lap, the same photograph she had shown Ethan countless times. Her eyes followed her son with quiet pride, though her heart ached with both joy and fear. The ceremony began with the sound of drums. A commanding officer walked onto the stage, his presence cutting through the air like a blade. Every movement of his carried weight, his gaze sharp and unwavering. His voice rose across the courtyard, steady and powerful. Today, we honor those who have endured where others could not. Today, we celebrate not just strength, but sacrifice. These men and women stand before you, not as recruits, but as guardians of duty. The words struck Ethan deeply. They reminded him of all he had survived, but also of what lay ahead. His eyes remained fixed forward, his jaw tight, his posture perfect. But inside, his chest swelled with emotions too heavy to name. Margaret listened intently. Every word of the officer's speech pressed against her heart. She had lived through sacrifice. She knew what it meant to give someone to duty. And now, watching her son, she felt the echo of her husband's legacy all over again. The officer's speech continued, but something shifted. His eyes, while sweeping across the graduates, caught sight of someone in the crowd. For a moment, his voice faltered. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. His gaze lingered on the front row, on Margaret. The silence that followed was brief, but heavy. Ethan noticed it. His brothers-in-arms noticed it. Even the crowd stirred, sensing a change in the rhythm of the moment. What had unsettled the commander? Why had his eyes frozen on Margaret? Ethan stood rigid, unaware that his graduation ceremony was about to become something far greater than he had ever imagined. The commander's eyes lingered too long. Margaret felt it before she understood it. At first, she thought it was a passing glance, the kind that leaders gave when addressing a large crowd. But this was not that. His gaze held weight, as if he recognized something about her. Something that pulled him away from his speech and back into a memory. Her fingers tightened around the photograph in her lap. The edges were worn from years of handling, but it was all she had left of David. She pressed it closer to her chest, hoping the motion would steady her racing heart. The commander cleared his throat, continuing his speech with the same steady rhythm as before. But Margaret knew something had shifted. The words no longer rang the same. They carried an edge, a break in the polished armor of his authority. Ethan sensed it too. He couldn't move his head, couldn't break formation, but he felt the ripple of unease move through the ranks. His instincts, sharpened by months of training, told him this was no ordinary pause. The air felt heavy, charged with something unseen. The officer's voice grew firmer again. Strength is not measured in muscle alone. It is measured in the will to endure, to rise after every fall, and to remember those who came before. The crowd clapped politely, though the energy felt off. Whispers rippled through the rows, quiet but restless. Families glanced at one another, wondering why the commander had faltered. Margaret kept her eyes low, wishing to disappear. She had not come here for attention. She had come to watch her son shine, to see him step into the life his father had once lived. But she could feel the truth stirring. She knew the commander had seen something, perhaps the small mark on her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve, a tattoo she had chosen years ago. Not decoration, but memory. Ethan clenched his jaw, his pulse hammering. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew it involved his mother. That thought alone filled him with unease. The drums beat again. The band struck a bright note. Yet the moment of silence still hung in the air, like a shadow no music could chase away. The ceremony pressed on. But the tension lingered like smoke. The commander continued his speech, pacing across the stage. His boots struck the wood with sharp precision, each step echoing. His words grew stronger, yet his eyes betrayed him. Again and again, they drifted back to the front row, back to Margaret. She sat tall, refusing to shrink beneath the weight of his stare. But her heart raced faster with each glance. She knew he remembered. The tattoo on her wrist carried more than ink. It carried numbers. Numbers tied to a night that had stolen her husband. The commander's chest rose with a deep breath. He spoke, louder, though his voice carried a crack now. Every emblem, every medal, every trident is bought with sacrifice. Some sacrifices are written in stone. Others live in the hearts of those left behind. The crowd stilled. Even children seemed to fall silent, sensing the seriousness of his tone. Ethan swallowed hard. His father's absence had always been a shadow in his life, but the way the commander spoke now made him feel that shadow pressing closer. The officer's gaze hardened. For a moment, his mask of command slipped. He looked not like a leader giving a speech, but like a man staring at a ghost. His hand gripped the podium tighter, knuckles pale. Margaret closed her eyes briefly. She had prayed this day would be simple, filled only with pride. But life rarely honored such prayers. The past was awake again, standing between her and her son's moment. The commander's voice dropped low, almost trembling. Some sacrifices are not forgotten. They return. They live among us. Ethan felt the words pierce through him. He didn't know why, but he knew they were meant for him. And in that moment, he understood that his graduation day was no longer only about him. The band waited silently at the side, instruments catching the sun. Their music had been planned for this moment, yet no one lifted a horn or struck a drum. The ceremony had slipped out of rhythm. The commander's eyes refused to let go of Margaret. He tried to speak as he always had, with steady authority, but memory broke through every word. He saw not only her face, but the tattoo she carried. That mark belonged to a story he could never forget. Margaret shifted in her seat, aware of the whispers rising around her. People had noticed. They followed the commander's gaze, curious, unsettled. She pulled her sleeve down quickly, hiding the ink, but it was too late. He had seen it. The tattoo was a small crest, faded by time, but beneath it were numbers. Numbers that carried pain. coordinates of a mission that had gone wrong. The commander's hand trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. His voice shook. These graduates stand on the shoulders of those who gave everything. Their lives, their courage, their final breath. His throat tightened. Some of us carry those memories not in books, not in medals, but on our skin, and in our hearts. Margaret's breath caught. She knew then that he remembered. He had been there. Ethan felt the shift deep in his bones. He couldn't break formation, but his eyes burned forward, unblinking. His thoughts raced. His mother, his father, the commander, all bound by something he did not yet know. The courtyard was silent now. The commander's speech no longer felt like ceremony. It felt like confession. And then, without warning, he closed the folder in his hands. The papers slapped together sharply, breaking the stillness. Murmurs swept through the audience. This was not planned. The commander stepped away from the podium. His boot struck the steps as he descended from the stage. Each step echoed, slow and deliberate. Every graduate stiffened. Every family leaned forward. He did not stop at the first row of recruits. He kept walking, past Ethan, past the rigid lines of uniforms, straight toward the families. Margaret's hands clutched a photograph in her lap. Her heart raced. She had known this day would bring pride,